following is the tape-recorded interview of Jack Arthur Womes from the 16th of the 5th, 96. This interview is being tape-recorded. I'm Detective Constable 2034 Myhill, stationed at Headquarters Central Detective Unit. The other police officer present is Detective Sergeant 68 Tim Wills, also from Headquarters. The date is Thursday the 16th of the 5th, 96, and the time by my watch is now 18:46. We're in an interview room at Grays Police Station, and this is a tape recorded interview of Mr. Womes. Jack, can you introduce yourself please once again? Jack Arthur Womes, address Brockford, and your date of birth 13th of the 2nd, 61. Thank you. Also present is Paul Roach, solicitor. Thank you very much. Before I go any further, I'll remind you, Jack, that you are under caution. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand the caution? I understand. Good. Thank you very much. Also remind you once again that at any time, if you want to stop the interview to consult with your solicitor, you just tell us and we'll turn the tape off, okay? Understood. Good. And also remind you once again that this tape is recording and that it may be used in a court of law, okay? Understood. Before I crack on again, I just want to make sure, is there anything in the 3 previous interviews today that you've not understood at all? I don't think so. Well, be sure, because if there is, then we'll try and clarify it now. If not, we'll just carry on. Carry on. Okay. Do you watch a lot of television, Jack? Newspapers? Do you read a lot of newspapers? Radio? Do you listen to the radio? Are you interested in current topics, the news of the day, if you like? The only reason why I ask you these questions, Jack, is that I'm going to start talking to you now about the 6th of December, there or thereabouts. I just want it clear in your mind what we're talking about. I want to talk to you about these events that led up to the 6th of December and happened on and around that time. Okay, because 3 men were killed, murdered in a Range Rover down a dark, secluded country lane in Rettendon on the 6th of December, there or thereabouts. And I think it would be fair to say that made national news, radio, TV, newspapers. Do you remember that being on the news, the radio, in the newspapers? Because I'm going to ask you if you can account for where you were, first of all, or around on the 6th of December. Can you tell me where you were? Because I believe you were down that dark, secluded country lane in Rettendon on the 6th of December, and I think you're responsible for the murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker, Craig Rolfe, and I invite you to make a comment on that. You are absolutely mistaken. That's the only comment I want to make. I'm mistaken? You don't want to expand on that at all? Did you murder Pat Tate, Tony Tucker, and Craig Rolfe? Absolutely not. Were you present when they were murdered? Absolutely not. Where were you on the 6th of December 95? Can you remember that day that we're talking about? Can you remember where you might have been that evening? No, I can't. Have you ever been to any... I don't know if you know Rettendon at all, do you? The area? No. Would you remember being in a leafy lane? It's the only way to describe it really. It goes nowhere. In December 95, in the area of Rettendon, Essex. I'd remember if I'd murdered someone. That's what you're trying to imply. And I've stated all the time you've been firing questions at me that I did not commit that terrible crime. Right. And you keep asking me questions on it, and I will say the same answer, because I don't know anything else. Right, okay. I accept that, Jack, and I have listened to what you say. We have got a duty to ask you these questions, Jack, and this caution is as much for us as it is for you, alright? And it says you do not have to say anything. You don't. It also says, if you do not mention when questioned something which you relate to relying in court, it may harm your defence. Now, if you're not questioned, then you don't get the opportunity to either mention it or to not mention, which is the implications for both of us. That's why we ask you the questions. And I accept what you say to me. I know nothing about it. I wasn't involved in those murders. We then ask you, were you in Rettendon on the 6th of December? And I haven't had an answer yet for December 95. I think I've said my piece. I don't take that as an answer to the question. That's a saying you think you've said your piece. Well, I'm sorry. It's best I don't answer. Okay, it's best you don't answer. That's what you said. Why's that? I'll remind you of my client's answer, When you said to him, have you been to Rettendon? He said no. I'm sorry, is that correct, Jack? You haven't been to Rettendon? Been to Rettendon? No. And also, as far as I'm sorry, you're answering the question. If you're saying that's what your client said, now I ask him to confirm that. No, because I didn't hear that. No, he did say, have you been to Rettendon? He answered no. I will clear it for you, please. I have to ask you the question again because it's getting confusing. Have you ever, or were you, in December 95, did you go to Rettendon at all? I have never been to Rettendon. Right. And also you read again the caution to my client, and you've asked him what he was doing on the night of the 6th. He's been honest enough to say that at this stage he can't say. I don't remember him saying that either. Did he not say? You asked him where he was on the 6th of December. Can you remember where you were? Where you might have been on the evening? I think you said, and he replied no. Have you been to Rettendon? No. I say we're having so many interviews here, at the end of the day, I think we're tending to forget Mr. Worm's answers here. He's clearly answered in the negative to both of these to which you've read out. Hang on a moment, Mr. Roach. I mean, I'm not forgetting anything. I think quite the opposite. I don't intend to stand here and be dictated to what questions I write. I don't think I've interrupted the flow of these interviews, but I think that's exactly what you're doing. This is fairly my first interjection. I think you owe me that. Yeah, and I think that you're telling me there's been a lot of interviews. That hasn't. Oh no. Well, there's been 6, this is. Over 3 days. Well, yes. Well, there isn't a lot of interviews, I don't think. 6 tapes. No, but with respect, I was fair enough to say that he said, to your question, have you been to Rettendon? He answered no. Right, we've cleared that up. I'm very grateful for clearing that up. So we've established then Mr. Worms has not been to Rettendon. So I'll take that, Jack, that you know where Rettendon is. Do you know where Rettendon is on the map? Is it possible that you could have gone to Rettendon and not known you was in the village or the area of Rettendon because maybe you don't know Essex or that part of Essex that well? You see, because we have a version of events, an account by Mr. Nichols, and I think it would be fair to say that a great deal of what Mr. Nichols has given as his account of that night certainly corroborates or falls in line with a long-running police inquiry. We, or I, whatever my colleague and I, will be potting that version of events to you, Jack. Mr. Nichols' account, and once again, it's going to be your chance to give us your version of the account of that night. Refute what do you understand what I mean by refute? Challenge what Mr. Nichols says and say that it's not right. Is that a better way of potting it? And this is why we're potting it to you, okay? It is your chance to turn around and say what Mr. Nichols says is a load of old tosh, a load of old rubbish. Let's put it in those terms, shall we? So let's start with tonight's interview. On the 6th of December 95, Wednesday night, where Mickey Steele, contacts Mr. Nichols, and I was going to say requests that Mr. Nichols comes and meets him, but I think that's probably the wrong wording. I think it's more like Mr. Steele says, you would like to come round and meet me at a place called Ron Parkinson's in Marks Tay. Do you know that, Jack? I think Ron Parkinson's, for the benefit of the tape for anyone who's listening, is a motorcycle shop in Marks Tay, and Marks Tay is situated on the A12 just outside Colchester. Do you know that? Nichols stated that he got there around about 1750 on that night, where Mickey Steele was waiting for him in his red Toyota Hilux. Steele, according to Nichols' version of events, tells him that he and Mickey Steele and yourself, Jack, are going to do a bit of business. They're going to deal with Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. Is that right? We're actually going to do a bit of business. What did he mean by that, Jack? Business. You're going to go and do with them. Now again, Mr. Nichols states that, I think this is roughly how it went, is that he was with Mr. Steele in the Hilux and you, Jack, pulled up in a B-Reg VW Passat motor vehicle, which apparently used to be Nichols's. And I think either you brought it off him or something like that. Is that right, Jack? Have you ever owned a B-Reg VW Passat? Have you ever bought a motor vehicle off Darren Nichols? Is what Darren Nichols says saying right? Did you turn up on Wednesday, the 6th of December, at Ron Parkinson's at Marks Tay in a B-Reg VW Passat? Mr. Nichols is saying that he never had a choice. He arrived there Obviously because he was scared of Mr. Steele for some unknown reason. He's in there, and know as soon as he got into the Toyota Hilux that you pull up in a B-Reg VW Passat, and you're away. You're off down the A12, going to do a bit of business, and you drive down to the halfway house, public house, on the A127. Is that right? You arrive round about 6:30 that night. Do you remember that, Jack? Is Mr. Nichols right? It's not a very nice night that night, is it? With the snow falling. It had been a cold, wet, horrible, snowy winter's night. Do you remember that? Mr. Nichols does. You're at the halfway house, Jack, with Mickey and Darren Nichols. Nichols was told to get out of the Hilux by Mickey and gets into the VW Passat with you. Is that right? In fact, he actually gets into the driver's seat, and as he's doing this, Jack, he remembers a Range Rover pulling up. The Range Rover, which we now know contained Patrick Tate, Anthony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, because they were all there to do a bit of business. Do you remember a Range Rover pulling up, Jack? But you drive off in your VW Passat, you telling Nichols where to go, what to do. So really, like you're telling Nichols what to do now, he's your underline. You tell him what to do, you're in charge of him. Is that right? You do actually tell him to stop at one point, don't you? You actually tell him to stop because you want to put some false number plates on the VW Passat. Why would you do that, Jack? Or maybe this is all lies, is it? Is this all a pack of lies? Absolutely a pack of lies. Is there any truth in any of it so far from your perspective? No truth whatsoever. Right, we'll carry on then. Why Darren Nichols is saying this, he must have his reasons, but why, I just can't think. What do you think his reasons are? Sorry, I can't think of any reason. I don't know why. Do you know him? That is a cold winter's night, Jack. A bit of snow, and these stick-on plates, they won't stick on, will they? So you don't bother in the end, so off you go again. As a matter of interest that you gave me a briefing in advance, I don't have some of these details. I didn't know anything about plates or anything like that. Well, you got what we considered to be a full and appropriate briefing. Yep, alright. I said to you, didn't I, that we have to. We can't tell you everything because we have to test what may be going forward. And Jack is saying that this is all a pack of lies so far. We have to test, obviously, who's telling the truth where, don't we? It's an account which Jack can refute, which he has. He said it's a pack of lies. Was that a pack of lies, Jack, about getting out the vehicle and wanting to stick false plates on? I think I've stated that everything I've heard is a pack of lies. It's alright, That's not a trick question, Jack. You know the tapes are running. It's not a trick question. I've asked you and you said it's a pack of lies. So you're off again and you're driving and you tell Nichols to stop the car. You're going to get out, or you get out and you tell Nichols that he's got to drive off. You've got to stay in the area because you'll phone Nichols to tell him when to come and pick him up. Do you recall that? And I believe that you'd certainly have got out the motor vehicle, the VW Passat, somewhere near the lane that led to the murder scene. Mr. Nichols tells us that you're wearing some dark clothing that night and you got out and you had a plumber's sized bag, is what he described with you. Do you own a tool bag? Plumber's bag? Something like that, Jack. You disappear, Nichols drives off. Not for long, he drives off and states he's having trouble getting a signal on his mobile phone. It was a bit hilly around the area, and obviously it was a bit of trouble to pick up the signal on his phone, but he kept moving his position, not for long. His phone rings, and you speak to him, Jack. You tell him come and pick you up, where you've been dropped. Remember that? Is that true? Anyway, Nichols goes back to the area where he's dropped you off, and you get into the car, and Nichols says, you say to him that Mickey's going to come and join you in a minute. Do you recall saying that? Did you get into his car, the VW Passat, with Nichols, and say Steele's going to come and join us in a minute? Mickey did appear. He was wearing overalls, in fact. I think Mr. Nichols stated you were both wearing a set of overalls, and Mickey comes and gets into the car. You've still got the bag with you that you left the car with, and Mick gets in the car and he's got a bag with him. You know what was in that bag, Jack? Well, Nichols was in there, and he says he sees what's described as a side-by-side shotgun in Mickey's bag. Is that right? Now, and I may need a bit of assistance here as regards to some conversation that took place in the VW Passat between Mickey, Darren and yourself. At some point, Mickey actually turns around and says, "That's sorted these fucking cunts out. Won't having no more truck with them." Do you remember that? Who was he talking about, Jack? He's talking about Tony Tucker, Patrick Tate and Craig Rolfe, wasn't he? You've just been down that lane in Rettendon, Jack, and blown them to bits with your shotgun. Is that what happened? 3 unarmed men sat in a Range Rover when you came out the bushes out of the dark on that snowy night. In fact, and my colleague here, I'm sure, will put me right, that vehicle that they were in, that Range Rover, went down that lane and Mickey was in there because it was all pre-arranged with him, wasn't it, Jack? All pre-arranged with your mate, Mr. Steele. He got out of the Range Rover, out of the back offside door. And you were so pumped up that night, Jack. You were ready for that night. 2 guns you had. You thrust one shotgun into Mickey's hand and you pushed him out the way. These are the words described by Mr. Nichols that you said, that he said in that car. And Nichols, sorry, Mr. Steele had described. Don't mess with him. He nearly pushed me out the way to get to him. And then you fired 7 rounds into them, Jack, into the head. No messing, eh? Because you were really fired up for it that night, weren't you? Mickey pre-arranged it. Because your mate Mick was in danger, wasn't he? Heaven forbid if anything should happen to your mate Mickey Steele. Because that's what he told you. I'm sure, wasn't it? That these 3 people, Tony Tucker, Patrick Tate and Craig Rolfe, they were going to take him out. They were going to kill your mate Mick. That couldn't be right. Mick hasn't got the balls to do it himself, has he? I'll get my mate to do it. I'll get him to come down there. Is that how it was, Jack? Is that what happened? Did he pop one last one in when they were already probably dead? Pat Tate still twitching a bit of just to show he could. Just to show he could, weren't it, Jack? Weren't a lot. You'd done the real work, hadn't you? You took the real risk, Jack. But he just went round to the near side of the car and fired one into Pat Tate. He was, I'd probably think, slouched in the back of the car by that time. True or not, Jack? Absolutely not true. What you've described to me is an horrific thing. It is horrific. I quite agree with you, Jack. 3 defenceless men get slayed like that by somebody with a... Absolutely. And I denied it all the way along in your questioning. And I've listened in your... how you put your story. You're reading it from your notebook. It's not a story. It's an account given by... Alright, an account. Well, I'm putting it in my own words. Yeah. And I've listened to it. I can't believe the reason why Mr. Nichols would say such a thing about me. And I could not do such a thing. The man's got to be lying. Were you with him that night? I've stated all the way along I don't know anything about it. So I'm saying I don't know anything about it. I couldn't have been there. I've asked whether you were with Darren Nichols that night of the murders. I've just answered it in my own way. I couldn't have been there. That's the answer I'm going to give you. Were you with Mickey Steele that night? I've stated I don't know anything about it. I'm asking you a question, Jack, not about a general answer. Were you with Mickey Steele? Well, I couldn't have been, because I don't know anything about the night when Pat Tate was killed and Tony was killed and Craig was killed. I'm sorry, I've just answered that. If I'm going to say I'm not there and I don't know nothing about it, how could I have been with anyone if someone's saying that they were there and I'm saying I wasn't there? That is just my interpretation. Well, best I can do. Alright then, let's just recap then. You're saying that for the last half an hour, what we've been talking about, that you're saying that you've never been to Rettendon. I don't know anything what has been said. I don't know. Well, I think so. It's all lies halfway through, you said. It's got to be. I mean, I can't think why Darren Nichols is lying. He must be lying. He must have a reason. Well, I just don't know. Why would he pick on you then, if he's lying, Jack? I mean, it upsets me that someone's implicated me as killing 3 people. I mean, I don't want to carry on talking about it because it's an horrendous thing for someone to actually point out for me to be killing 3 men. Well, we've got, it seems to me, Jack, we're getting another reason why you shouldn't answer these questions that are being put to you. We've had various reasons over the last couple of days. Well, can I just say this, and I will say this once more. I don't know nothing about it, so I cannot answer your questions. Well, you can answer questions like, do you know Mickey Steele, can't you? Yeah, I suppose I could do, but you're not. No, at this point in time. Yeah, it upsets me to talk about what you're implicating, or someone's implicating too. Well, let's make no mistake, that's what we're implicating as well. Make no mistake about that, Jack. I'm not trying to say that someone else is saying that, or that it's a tall story or something. What I'm actually saying is that I actually firmly believe the account that we've just given to you. And I'm prepared to accept responsibility of what is being said here. I'm not going to say it's someone in another police station just spouting it out, and we'll just talk about that. What I'm saying is, we are putting this to you because we believe that it is fact, and I'm asking you for your comments. Now, I accept what you say. It is a shocking thing, very shocking thing. Allegations don't come much more stronger than this, right? But we've been asking you questions now, and you're saying to me that you're shocked by it all now. We're asking you questions. You've been under arrest for these offences for 2 days now. It's not come straight out of the blue, the allegation. I arrested you, I think, on Tuesday morning, early hours Tuesday lunchtime-ish, for the 3 murders, yeah? And we've been asking you questions since then. Like, do you know Mickey Steele? Do you know Darren? I take it from the way you've answered the questions about why should Darren say that, you do have some acknowledgement of Darren Nichols. We're asking you now, do you know Darren Nichols? You started off just now, I think. I think it's Tim, isn't it? Do I have any comments on it? I have no comment. Right. Do you know Darren Nichols? I have no comments on this. I'm not asking you. I'm asking you now whether you know Darren Nichols. That's the question. I'm not saying I'll make no comment. Right. You said, I think, Jack, you are shocked by this crime. I think my colleague called it a heinous crime. It is a shocking crime, isn't it? Even more shocking, I suppose, that you should be or have the finger pointed at you. And my colleagues alike were shocked by the violence of it. And I think the media, the press, the newspapers, TV, radio were shocked by it. In fact, they were so shocked by it, they thought it was national headline news. Don't think I'm being rude here, I'm not. And you're not a hermit, Jack, are you? You watch the TV, because I think I remember you hear you saying that you like the TV, not so keen on the newspapers. Do you not recall this being on the news, on the TV, in the newspaper? See, that's my way of trying to think that if this is total lies, Jack, I'd be pulling my hair out, trying to think where I was on the 6th of December. I can remember it being on the TV, where I was that night before, or the night before that. But you sit there, and you look at me, Jack, and you don't say anything. Shocking, shocking crime, but you don't know where you were that night. These 3 were friends of yours. They were people you knew, were they not? I have no comment on the subject. Anyway, heavens yes, 39 minutes up on the tape. If we go back to the account that Mr. Nichols was giving you, Steele and Nichols are in the VW Passat. You drive out of the lane. He says you turn left towards Raywith. And generally, after some driving, you end up at a public house, which we think is the Traveller's Joy, or it may have been renamed the Hungry House Public House then, near Rayleigh Railway Station. Do you recall that? Have you ever been to that pub near Retterdon? Nichols states that you and Steele, in the car, he parks next to Mickey's red Toyota Hilux, which is there already in the public house car park. Mickey's out of the car and he takes off his overalls in the car park. I think you had a bit of blood on you, didn't you, Jack? That you had to sort out. Did you have some surgical gloves? Did you wear surgical gloves that night, Jack? Do you have access to surgical gloves for work to stop you getting your hands messed up? Do you ever wear surgical gloves in your work? Page missing. Oh, and while you're signing that, Jack, we haven't actually said in every interview, but can you confirm that you received on your first interview at least an A405, which explains the tape interview and how you can get access to that tape? I can confirm that, yeah. Thank you very much. That was the buzzer sounding that we're near the end of the tape. The date is still Thursday the 16th of the 5th, 96, and the time by my watch now is 21:30. This interview is now concluded.